All right, welcome back to the favorite part of your week and ours, the IOST podcast. Mike, Dima, Q, we're here. We're ready to go. How's everybody doing?
I like that intro, man.
I do. I've been practicing that for a while. What's going on, everybody? How you doing today, Dima?
I'm doing great. It's some crazy weather outside right now.
You survived Costa Rica?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
We put the RIP for you in the last episode just in case. How was it?
I saw that shout out. It was great. We visited museums, went to a library there.
Wow.
Did some...
Just low key?
Yeah, just low key stuff,
Poetry readings.
Exactly, yeah.
Nice. Well, we're glad to have you back. Me and Mike missed you while you were gone. We had a long... Oh, yeah, I'm talking a little bit too loud. All right. We had a pretty eventful week here as far as Sutler Ventures goes. We have a pretty loaded episode. We have Benny Jong from Dapper Labs. Those are the guys behind CryptoKitties as well as their new game Cheese Wizards on the latter half of the episode. So super excited. That was probably one of my favorite interviews to do.
Yeah.
We have a pretty loaded episode. We also have an IOST giveaway next week.
Yeah, coming up with another IOST giveaway. We want to hear from you guys, so I think we'll probably do it in poll format, kind of figure out where you guys see improvements needed, see how we can help get those improvements done.
Perfect. So we have that giveaway as well as the contribution rewards. We want to remind everybody at the end of June. So that's going to be sometime. Is that July 1st, June 31st? When do you think?
Yeah, I would guess it'd probably be like 4 to 7 days after. That's what we saw. After the first kind of contribution period, which, as a reminder, was shortened. It was basically only 22 days. So, those rewards will be quite a bit fatter than they were the first time.
Nice. And it's time based too, right? So voters have to, like, as far as the contribution rewards, we receive whichever tier that we're in, but it depends on when you start staking with us, correct?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So it basically ensures that you can't just jump in on the last day and claim those tier 1 rewards. So our longtime voters, appreciate you guys. It allows us to do what we do. Keep rocking and rolling out here in New York or wherever, talking IOST. So contribution rewards coming up. It'll be an exciting time.
Awesome. Perfect. So we've got a couple things to get to. We have some stuff to get to on the dApp front. There is an IOSTLand auction going on, as well as CryptoNinjas integration into OnBlock. We have a couple AMAs from both Terry and Jimmy, and we're going to talk about the Institute of Blockchain and have Dimitri talk about his TA, yet to be named TA section. Do we have a name
yet?
Should
we open that up to comments?
Yeah, we should. Oh, yeah, speaking of comments, we had a comment on the last episode that talked about how IOST is featured on TradingView. Is that right, what happened?
Yeah. It's basically not spelled correctly, or they have it mislabeled.
Okay.
It's labeled as iSimple token. And it's basically the TradingView dollar calculation for IOST, which they're saying derives from Binance. That's the only one I saw that that he pointed out. Everything else, is correct in terms of like IOST versus BTC and so on. So
okay,
gotcha.
That's something that
all right,
we'll get fixed.
Yeah, we'll definitely get fixed. We actually reached out to the TradingView team, so we'll get that fixed. But thank you to the IOST community member that pointed that out to us so that we could get that fixed. All right, so going to this IOSTLand auction, we talked with Metanix today, actually, in our Telegram chat. It's basically an auction that's going on from May 28th to June 4th, and there's like a $50,000 or 50,000 IOST prize that's attached. So if you essentially buy a piece of like a parcel of land in this open world kind of setting, you can essentially have the chance to win a 50,000 IOST prize. For those of you that don't know what IOSTLand auction or IOSTLand is, it's a dApp that's coming to IOST essentially, where you're going to have kind of a virtual world of sorts where you can buy land. It almost works like staking. So you could essentially have a land that works in your favor, and there's going to be an in-game economy where you can earn a certain amount of IOST. I'm certain. Yeah. What do you guys think about IOSTLand?
It's basically a sister to Decentralized, right? Which has seen some good growth. They made it through the bear market. That team is doing good things. And if you look at the marketplace as we have for Decentralized, I believe that we saw that their transaction volume on their marketplace was the largest across any dApp. So if if you were to consider that a dApp, it would basically be number one. So I think all in all, IOSTLand is headed in a direction that a lot of people think dApps and NFTs will be heading in, basically where in this case it's obviously real estate, but there will be many other things like skins and whatnot in games. Or one thing we talked about with Benny on the interview was that they did like a digital piece of clothes, I guess, or fashion or something that was able to be sold for quite a bit of money. So it's all headed that way. It's good to see IOSTLand growing, and cool to see whether it's Metnix or anybody else buying up those land pieces.
Yeah, so basically if you go into IOSTLand right now, just like in Decentraland, like Mike is talking about, they basically have a map, and essentially you can buy different little 1x1 parcels of land, or some that are next to each other, because I think that increases the efficiency of what your land produces. But you can buy like a dock, you can buy just a standard piece of land, you can buy an industrial piece of land. I'm assuming all of these have different workings within the in-game economy within IOSTLand.
Yeah, that's pretty much the question that I have, and what Metanix asked is, what is going to be the use of specific locations?
Yes.
Metanix was trying to get that dock. I hope they did get that. Maybe it would be interesting if it was like, say they have some kind of control on trade, or something that involves the dock itself. So it would be interesting to see like what specific abilities each land or property will have, which essentially will result in some kind of a value.
Yeah, right now, Decentraland hasn't really gotten into that in-game economy. It's more like, hey, look at this world that we're creating. I mean, there's going to be certain sections that are where the real estate is more valuable, and you have seen that, like people that got in on ICO price. Essentially, you buy the mana, which is the token of Decentraland, and then with the mana, you can purchase these parcels called land, and then land is a token or an NFT in of itself.
Right.
But they haven't got into like, hey, we're going to have this in-game economy and all these things. It's basically like, we're just forming this world so that you can see it.
Right.
Whereas IOSTLand and another game, if you guys are interested, it's called Mega Cryptopolis. They're getting into more in-game economies on these worlds, these in-game worlds.
Which is interesting. It's been driven by just supply and demand without actual, providing like a special ability, but people were just purchasing it because of the actual location and view. Maybe in anticipation that later on those locations will have special abilities or certain things that are better.
Right, yeah. So like in the industrial park or whatnot would kind of be like quote unquote zoned for certain activities, and maybe you have to be zoned for skyscraper buildings or something like that, or zoned for casinos, or there's all the possibilities are really endless. I mean, you can apply most kind of real world real estate parameters to IOSTLand if you want to.
Yeah, the biggest difference I see between the two is Decentraland, you're looking to buy the real estate near something that's functioning. So, for example, like a fashion district or a red light district, or just any type of thing like that. On these Mega Cryptopolis or IOSTLand, you're actually buying the land and it's producing something. So it should be super interesting to see how that develops. We need to get our hands on the white paper.
So where are we gonna set up Sutler Ventures HQ?
Yeah, exactly. Well, next to Metanix is buying all the docks. Is that?
Hey man, I said you control the ports, you control the trade. Man, listen,
so
that's what he's doing.
Yeah, shout out to him. Hopefully, we'll be able to get some property next to each other. We'll move on to the next little category we had here, which is CryptoNinjas had that integration into OnBlock. I'm gonna pull up a little screen recording that we did earlier today. Basically, it's a strategy game where you can purchase castles and ninjas, and you could I guess you could set an amount of EG, that's the in-game token that you buy with IOST, and you can set that amount within your castle. You get to name your castle, what have you, and other players get to try to attempt to steal whatever you place in that castle, and you set traps. So if you ever see that Minesweeper game where you can kind of like click, and if you hit the bomb, it like explodes, that's essentially what you do. You start at the beginning of this little map to get to their castle, and if you traverse that map without running into all the traps and your ninja has a certain amount of life, you can steal the EG that's inside of that castle. and if not, the castle, like if the ninja dies, then you can steal, the person whose castle it is can steal the EG from that ninja.
Oh,
Gotcha.
wow.
So it'll be interesting to see how all that works. We're getting a call?
No, that was Zach. In the other room.
Okay, thank God. All right. It'll be interesting to see how the in-game kind of game theory works within CryptoNinjas, but it's cool to see OnBlock continue to add more and more dApps to your roster, essentially.
Yeah, I was impressed with CryptoNinjas there. Obviously, usability has been an issue with a lot of these dApps, but you can see pretty plainly what OnBlock does, right? It's a huge integration, and watching you play CryptoNinjas, like I was feeling addicted to it already. I mean, you can go and play this game that as we've talked about many times, actually allows you to earn something, right? Versus you having to spend money on a game or the game being free. Now we're moving into this earning economy. The one thing that we talked about as well on CryptoNinjas was that the underlying token that you can win, which is also the one that you have to spend IOST to buy, right? So basically, you go on, you create the account. You have to spend IOST to buy this CryptoNinja token. That's the token that you win or lose back and forth depending on how you do in the game. It'll be interesting to see how long it takes for some of these tokens to get up on a DEX. I just checked dDEX. It looks like there's nothing there yet, but as we continue to grow, in the same way we saw with ETH in their DEXs, and then saw with EOS in their DEX, new DEX, having those tokens on an exchange is only going to do more for these dApps, because now you can actually go earn tokens and turn them into USD or turn them into IOST or whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, it's essentially closed loop where you can only enter IOST and not pull anything out. Right. So that should be interesting going forward. I know Chris is shaking his head. We've had the conversation in the Telegram many times, and he's looking at more dApps outside of gaming. When do more popular dApps outside of the gaming atmosphere, and this is kind of off topic for this episode because we had Dapper on, but when do dApps outside of gaming come to IOST?
Well, and not to steal your what you were going to say here.
I was looking at you.
But so I was talking to Ben last night, Ben Waters of IOST, and then also looking at the AMA that Terry did with the Ocean protocol. Ocean Talk basically is their AMA session that Terry, the CTO of IOST, did. Basically, some of the stats that he laid out was that IOST has been working with 90 different dApp teams. Currently, there are 50 dApps being developed on IOST, and they've worked with, in some fashion, over 1,000 different developers globally now. So this is growing exponentially. I mean, even week over week, we're seeing a lot of kind of the more lower hanging dApp fruit, if you will, right? Be released.
It's the first iteration.
Yeah, the simple stuff, right? The stuff that doesn't take as long to develop, but having talked to them, while there is an emphasis on gaming and gambling, right? These are dApps that have seen success on other protocols already. IOST really wants to push for those decentralized finance dApps, like we saw with Liibi Pool that came out,
okay,
as well as others that are non-gaming related. So I think it's likely that those are going to take a little bit longer, but from what I have heard over the next few weeks, we should start to see more non-gaming dApps coming out on IOST, like we said last episode.
Okay, cool. And then before you, Dimitri, did you have anything before
I mean, he pretty much said it all.
Okay.
I mean, like for example, Burmy app, it's not a gaming app.
Yeah.
Right. And
social media.
Yeah, social media could be another venue for IOST.
Yeah.
Burmy's still the wild card here.
Yeah.
So Deem, you were in Costa Rica, obviously, but last week Q and I were talking, and one point that we brought up, I think it was on the podcast, was so if Burmy is growing so much, right, and they have 150,000 daily active users or whatever it is, right? Could the network support that at this point, or are they waiting for that reason? I mean, obviously, and Terry mentions it in this AMA I was talking about. Obviously, they're utilizing that growth of Burmy and the growth of some of these other dApps like Endless and whatnot to basically bring users over to other dApps or users onto IOST. So, that is still kind of the big mystery, right? Like, when do we see Burmy?
That's something I was talking about. When you have like dice games or gambling games that come in first, it's a good way to actually benchmark the network in terms of transactions. So, that could be something they're waiting on in terms of results. They see great results and then they might make the migration. Really, honestly, like the migration has to be smooth, so without any issues, because you have existing users there and you don't want to mess that up.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, as one final point, I believe Jimmy tweeted something that the highest transaction per second number that we got to was like maybe a few hundred, maybe like 126 TPS is what was basically being used on the network. Right. Whereas obviously it can max out to something like 8,000 transactions per second. So we'll see. It's an interesting thought, and it might be why Burmy is still kind of that mystery dApp out there right now.
Another nugget from that, Terry, because you mentioned Terry's AMA. Another nugget from that was a question asked by the OceanX and Ocean Talk team. They said, "What are your next country targets?" And Terry goes on to say, "Mainly in EU. So we're focusing on Russia, UK, and Germany." So that's something that wasn't public knowledge, I think, before this AMA. So it's good to see their next targets, and we'll see how they attempt to target those areas.
It's interesting because Burmy is focusing on Latin America, so they're covering that side. And I guess they're, expanding to, looking to expand to EU and Russia and so on.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there are a few other things on that point. Basically, Terry, in a question about the team, laid out that of the 110 total people that work for IOST now, 50 of them are devs. So that's a solid-sized dev team. He also said that offices have expanded, and while they are certainly not as big as the Beijing office, obviously they have one in New York in the U.S. with primarily the Burm folk. But then they're also setting up or have set up in Korea, Japan, Singapore, and Germany. So it seems to me like they're kind of going wide before they go deep, right? Setting up the pipelines or the avenues that when they're ready to launch a Burmy type, they can just absolutely flood those pipelines in those countries, make sure they have boots on the ground, make sure they're taking those meetings for partnerships and whatnot. So,
and we were having this conversation before when we were talking about IOSTLand, because IOSTLand is either a Japanese or Chinese. I wasn't even able to decipher that. I need to go back in. But we were having this conversation before the podcast, and what IOST needs right now is a dApp with a development team from the United States. That I think we're a little bit biased, obviously, because we're in the United States. All of you guys are most likely, either United States or Eastern. What am I saying? Western European users. So I think we need something from a United States or a Western European, dev team to kind of really spark interest from those areas.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll hear from Benny and kind of his team on what they're planning. But one important point he talked about was just the growth of dApps in general. So yeah. I think we'll definitely see that. It's going to be Asian focused at first.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, as it is an Asian project. So we'll move on to this Institute of Blockchain story really quick that you can touch on, Mike, and then we'll touch into Dimitri's TA.
Yeah.
So what's going on with the Institute of Blockchain?
Definitely. Yeah. So education, right, is something that I think everybody agrees cryptocurrency needs. It's just kind of more boring. So I think it falls through the cracks a little bit, or isn't one that's kind of heavily talked about. So we talked about last episode, just as context here, Enterprise Singapore coming on board, I believe it was, right, which is basically a group or coalition, an organization, right, that is promoting blockchain in Singapore. So this is kind of the second piece to that. This is the educational aspect of that partnership in Singapore, where as it says in the article that came out, basically IOST is going to be included with Ethereum and Hyperledger in this educational push that is happening in Singapore. So it's very clear that IOST sees a lot of potential in Singapore. Obviously, there's a lot of money in Singapore. Obviously, they're very cryptocurrency friendly. But it seems to me, based on these two announcements, that IOST is starting to invest time and resources heavily in Singapore, starting in a good way, right? Partnering with the organizations that are already working for other protocols like Ethereum and Hyperledger.
So is this announcement in any way related to the last announcement they made with the Singapore partnership?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's just basically
adding on.
Yeah, just basically kind of like a wing of that Enterprise Singapore, right?
Got it.
So Enterprise Singapore is kind of the that announcement was really talking about funding, right? Here are the resources available for those who whether they're in Singapore or not, but have some connection to Singapore. Maybe they incorporate in Singapore, for example. They have now the ability to go out and raise money through this new setup. So this again is kind of on the kind of as a second piece to that announcement, is basically like, okay, well, from an educational standpoint, we're also working on this. The Ethereum and Hyperledger have been the focus. Now IOST is getting thrown right in there.
Cool. Yeah.
Dima's getting ready for his TA section here. So with that, I think Dima is ready. So we'll hop into that section really quick.
Cool. Yeah, let me hit the record button here. All right. So, we have IOST USD, which is named iSimple token on the trading view, which we talked about. I have it set up on a daily so we can just take a look at the big picture essentially first. As you can see, we had the big run up here, and then we came down, and we've been essentially ranging from April 15th until essentially now between the levels of a penny and 1.4 cents, essentially. So we've been within this range bound relatively with wicks outside of it. So there's essentially pressure on the bottom in terms of support and the pressure on top in terms of resistance. So really not much of a price movement in IOST besides a sideways, but overall, if you look at it, the candles itself, if they're showing, higher lows, then that essentially indicates, that it is a possibility that we can go higher and break out of the range. Looking at the volume as well, the volume has been consistent. If you drop it to 4-hour chart, you'll see spikes in volume in terms of buying right here, and right here. So, and you can see that it is, it's possible that somebody loading up essentially on IOST who's big. It can be, maybe a new node that's trying to, start on IOST, or it could be dApps or whatnot. That essentially is a positive indication.
Gotcha. And for those who don't know, when you say it's ranging, right, or something is range bound, what do you mean?
So basically, the price is staying within confined levels. As I mentioned, we have these two levels that I've outlined, which is a penny and 1.4.
Gotcha.
Is where it has been kind of moving sideways between those two levels. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And another thing that I want to point out also on the daily is that just using simple moving averages, we have 50. It's over 100 moving average. 200 moving average. So that's a good indication. I have just Fibonacci levels just so you can see how the price interacts within those levels as well, which is always interesting to see. Fibonacci is like a traditional thing that is used a lot, in stock trading and FX trading. It's surprising how much it follows those levels, of that golden ratio.
So there has been a lot of talk in the community about how IOST kind of, I wouldn't say missed the bull market, but didn't see the 20, 30, 40% gains that some other coins did. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's interesting because, when you think about it, when you have these new nodes that are coming into the ecosystem, or you have, dApps that are trying to build on IOST, if the price runs, then the barrier for entry is going to be higher, right, to purchase that token. So it is possible that containing that price within a range gives an opportunity for those people to actually load up and get in, right, rather than kind of letting the price run of itself.
Yeah, we saw that a little bit just looking at some of the order books. You can really see how market makers are using that range to make money, right? When a range is really clear like that, people will essentially plug in a sell wall and plug in a buy wall to try to keep it within that range to make that money. I mean, it happens across tokens. It's not just IOST. It's pretty standard for the market. It even happens with some of the bigger coins to some degree as well. So and just looking at this as well, for me, I'm glad that we're sitting at the top of this range. We've done a really good job of holding that key penny mark, And you know, as far as moving averages go, Dima, did you say we're above or under 200? Where
yeah, the 50 is above 200 on a daily. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool.
So as far as charting goes, and you're looking at these charts, are you using daily most of the time, or what kind of time frames are you looking at?
I start with the daily just to see the big picture and outline the big levels that I see, where essentially you see wicks, you know, resistance, support, outline that first, and then I drop it down to, let's say, 4 hour or an hourly. I wouldn't really move anything, you know, below that unless you're really trying to maybe, you know, get in and out with a small range or not. But 4 hour and daily is like my bread and butter, basically.
Sounds good. Well, that was a good first segment. If you guys want to see more from Dimitri, or you absolutely hate it and we have to shut that down immediately, leave comments and we'll, you know, continue to give you great content like Dimitri said a couple weeks ago. So
should we throw some predictions in here? Make Dima
not an investment advice.
Yeah, this is not investment advice. Yeah. That's like that meme with the Cheeto. Have you seen the Cheeto meme? I'll throw it up on the screen, but it's like it says influencers, and it's like a SWAT team busting out a door, and it shows not investment advice as the Cheeto, as the lock that's holding the door.
Oh yeah.
But I'll put that up. It'll give you some context, and you might have a laugh, maybe not. But
all in all, just to wrap up the TA, I think, you know, it seems like we're headed in the right direction here a bit. We haven't seen the growth that some of the other alts have. Certainly not that Bitcoin has. You know, even more macro, looking at the market as a whole, I think if Bitcoin continues to range here a little bit between our like 84 and 88 or 8900 that we've seen here over the last couple of days, understanding that we're recording the podcast you know, a day before we post it, so Bitcoin's at like 12,000. You know, that's why. But I think if that continues to range, we'll start to see some money pulled out of Bitcoin and into alts, where people start to focus on some of those gems, some of those diamonds in the rough, if you will.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Looking at the BTC dominance, you know, we peaked at 60% on BTC dominance, and then, you know, we essentially dropped down to like 55, 56% right now, and you can see that the rotation is happening into alts.
So it's
alts are picking up.
Okay, so it's easy to see that the money from Bitcoin's flowing into the alts then?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you see that? What website are you using? Are you using TradingView?
CoinMarketCap.com.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, CMC.
It's like one of the most popular websites in the entire world.
Top 100. Nice.
Cool. Well, that'll be it for today's podcast. If you guys, again, want to see more, you want to see certain content, please leave comments, like, subscribe to the video as well as follow us on SoundCloud and iTunes. I believe it's the IOST podcast. If you can't find us there, it's Sutler Ventures. But keep a lookout for that IOST giveaway next week. We'll be announcing it on next week's podcast, so that'll be fun. Cool. You guys got anything else?
Yeah, just you know, keep hodling strong. Hope everybody's doing well as we move into the summer months for crypto here. It's be interesting.
Happy trading.
Awesome. Well, we'll head into that interview with Benny. All right, welcome back to the episode. We have Benny Jiang, a founding team member and product marketing lead at Dapper Labs. Benny, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much, Mike and Zach, for inviting me on the episode. Really excited to be here and share some of the new developments at Dapper Labs.
That's awesome. So we obviously met you at East Meets West. That was a great little event for New York City Blockchain Week, and you guys made a great presentation about your new game, Cheese Wizards. How did you find New York City Blockchain Week?
Yeah, it was really busy. We actually did the whole spread. We started at Fluidity, then Ethereal, then Consensus, then Token Summit, then ETH New York to top it. In all of the conferences, and we also in some cases had campaigns or had a booth, so we did a lot of things there, and so it was extremely busy. Not only that, as you guys know, there are usually 3 to 4 events in the evening. Some of them are developer meetups, some of them are investor focused, and then some of them are more after parties and social, and so we actually tried to attend 3 or 4 of them each night. So
wow. Wow.
it was nonstop for the 11 days that we were there, and but it was really exciting. We met a lot of people. Being based in Vancouver, most of the team is. We do have a lot of remote calls with people in the community and other project leaders, founders of other projects, and it's always good to put a face to a name and meet in person. It's always the height that kind of throws me off. Like when you have a conversation, how tall or short they are, and then when you meet in person, sometimes it's just like, oh, whoa, I didn't expect you to be like 8 foot.
That's awesome, man. So dApps are obviously a huge, over the past, I would say even 6 months to a year, dApps have really taken a front run in the cryptocurrency blockchain industry. And you guys are kind of at the center of all of this, having launched CryptoKitties and now your new game, Cheese Wizards. What is your feel about kind of the macro, industry of dApps, and where are we headed? How far have we come to this point, and things like that?
Yeah, so dApps are growing a lot. I think that, we're finally getting to a point, at least in the Ethereum space, where a lot of the middleware and the technical libraries, they now exist. So we're getting to a point where developers could actually come in and, ship something sense. They're starting to begin a lot more, I guess, healthy competition around building dApps that have great user experience, great user interfaces. I think in the last half year or year and a half, a lot of the focus has been, not the best looking interfaces as long as it kind of works, and kind of connecting the blockchain with your back end, with your front end. So now that those connections are made, I think that a lot of projects are building, and we could see that at ETH New York. There were, I think their attendance was 400 or 500 developers, and for us, we actually attend a lot of the ETH events. Like we actually launched CryptoKitties at ETH Waterloo. It was one of the first ETH global events, and it was the first time I met Vitalik. And then we went to ETH Denver, and then now we're ETH New York. So we've seen the space grow, and there's just been increasingly a large games or decentralized finance or experiment with DAOs. There's a whole gamut of things that are being built, and I've had the chance to actually speak with a few of them, and genuinely really excited how people are mixing in DeFi with NFTs and doing a lot of crazy stuff that I couldn't have imagined yet so far as well.
Nice, that's awesome. I mean, obviously you guys are a major reason for dApps coming to the forefront here. For us who weren't kind of behind the scenes with CryptoKitties like you guys were, obviously a huge hit. What was that massive wave of users and PR like?
Yeah, so I actually had an interview with a person who's writing this book for the history of Ethereum, and we had a really long conversation about this specific and kind of insider look at what was happening in the company during that period. I think the TLDR was everything was on fire, and we didn't really know what the solutions were. I think there was a point where momentum was slowly building. In the beginning, we had a lot of early adopters. I remember kind of engaging a lot of reporters and journalists from tech and crypto, and messaging them about, hey, we're putting cats on the blockchain. And there's an interesting there's email to Casey Newton. He's from The Verge, and the headline was, I like to write like headlines that are like, I don't capture your attention. So I put cats are coming to the blockchain. And the funny thing is he screenshotted that and he tweeted it, and he said, I'm going back to bed. So it's safe to say that Casey didn't write about it, and that was kind of the case for us, like telling people that cats are coming blockchain, and people were just weirded out, or they're like kind of intrigued. And so in the beginning, when we were kind of building that momentum, A lot more people started to come in from the Ethereum space. We launched at ETH Waterloo, so a lot of the projects like Parity and 0x, a lot MetaMask team members were playing CryptoKitties at the conferences, and that contributed to some of the initial transaction volume that was in the network. And each time we climbed like 3 or 5%. And send it to June, who is the managing director now of CoinDesk. By the time he was at Quartz, and I was like, "Hey June, lots of people are buying cats. It's like taking over the network." And he said, "Oh, I'm busy. I'm writing a piece about Vitalik. I don't have time to write about this." And I think when it hit like 10 or 15% of the total network of Ethereum, then he was like, "Okay, I'll write about it." And he was the first reporter who actually wrote about CryptoKitties. And after that, it was like a landslide of like TechCrunch. Then we went to BBC and CNN, and it just went crazy all around the world. And that was great because we saw, I think, over 1 million unique visitors to the website in a very, very short amount of time. And obviously we had to bump up our servers to support that much traffic, and people were clamoring at the doors, trying to adopt their CryptoKitty and submitting transaction and actually spending tons of money. Transaction. I remember we were looking at ETH gas station a lot and like trying to give guidance to some of the new users of like, hey, yeah, you should check here and then go back to your MetaMask and kind of adjust it. And for most people, they're like, "What are you talking about? Buy one of these kitties." And so when that momentum started to happen, the fire started to become more and more bigger. And one of the stories I told was like, I had a friend of a friend who was based in Singapore, but actually started a new job, a new opportunity in Beijing. And he was working at a mining company that was running ASICs, and they were mining Ether and Bitcoin Cash, etc. And at that time, I didn't really understand. I understood blockchain like theoretically how it worked, but I was trying to understand like, is there a way? So the phone, like Skype, and I Skype called him and I was like, "Hey, you have a lot of mining machines, right?" And then he's like, "Yeah, we do." And I was like, "Can you like somehow prioritize kitties? Like, can you mine the kitties first because we're clocking out the network?" And you should just see his face. He's just like, "I don't think that's possible." I was just sitting there and it was silence with my engineers on the call too, and we were just like, "Oh, okay. So what do we do?" And then they're like, "I don't know, like, just hang tight."
Yeah.
And so that was one example of us, like one of the fires, and there was a couple more that happened. So it was a lot of intensity. We actually, called up Joseph Poon. We were on a call with L4 because they're building state channels, and we called up everybody who we thought were the smartest people in the space, and we asked them the same question, like, "Is there anything we could do?" And they all yeah, and so that's when we really realized, oh, okay, this is real. This is the blockchain, and we ran up right against it, and we found the limits, at least the limits that time in that present time. So, it was a frenzy, but it was a very fun one. We stayed up really late, and we learned a lot of things, and it's great to be, great to jumpstart this entire ecosystem in opening the eyes of what is possible when you build on top of the blockchain. And actually, since then, there's been over 1,000 blockchain games across all of the different protocols that exist, and there's probably more. And a lot of the protocols have shifted their mandate towards games, right? Like Tron, EOS, Ripple, like almost all the top 10 now have a focus or a fund for blockchain games. So it's very interesting to see how and so that was the launch of CryptoKitties in the sense of the initial momentum and the impact that it had.
Yeah, I think even within IOST, there's an understanding that games are going to be at least part of that adoption curve that we'll see with cryptocurrency. But I want to comment on one thing, because we obviously interviewed you at ICO Alert when all the craze was happening back then. One of the things the team actually did was look at how you guys were educating non-crypto users, because you guys did a great job with your FAQ section on how to educate someone on what is CryptoKitties. Hey, how do you use MetaMask? So I just want to give you credit there for that. I did want to go through what you're doing with Dapper Labs right now, as far as the tool, because the tool kind of mirrors what we have on IOST, which is called OnBlock. The IOST users will understand what it is, but it's a way for non-crypto users to sign up for a dApp just by using their mobile phone. Isn't that kind of something that you guys are doing at Dapper Labs, where you're covering ETH fees as well, or gas fees?
Yeah, so for those who are new to Dapper Labs, that's the company that we've spun out and raised the Series A for 27.5, and we have some amazing investors like Andreessen Horowitz, Union Square Ventures, Venrock,
Nice.
and Google Ventures, Samsung. So a ton of really amazing partners and investors. Thank you. And so Dapper Labs, we have two primary initiatives. One initiative is forming a studio and continuously building blockchain native games. I talk about, but also working with like Hollywood studios, sports leagues, celebrities, esports teams, and other entertainment companies to build blockchain games. The second part of the company is around building technology. So we realized very early on for CryptoKitties, we actually built our own custom data dashboards that pulls in data from the on-chain and also backend information. So then from this we could see the funnel of attrition of people who drop off when they visit the website and how many of them actually buy a kitty. And we had this in place for more than half a year already, and we've been collecting data and analyzing it and trying to and actually making improvements to the game based on that. And we also do qualitative surveys. So what we realized very early on, and I've talked about this in a lot of conferences that I attended last year, was an onboarding problem. And there's several ways. And I think some of the other blockchain games have followed suit, and other dApps have as well. And that walks the users through the steps of installing MetaMask and getting that set up. But even then, we found that a lot of people still get lost at the step of actually using MetaMask, because there's just so many controls there in terms of gas, in terms of network fees, and it's all decimals, and it gets confusing. So about 9 months ago, we started working on a solution that we call Dapper. And Dapper is a smart contract wallet. It's, to be frank, I think that it's this category of wallet is very new. I think people are very familiar with decentralized wallets, where you have the seed words, the mnemonic phrase, and the private keys. And if you lose your private keys, it's game over. No matter if you had basically hold all your keys, and they offer an amazing user experience, and that's what exchanges offer and other services, but that causes problems when there's a central point of failure. So what we built at Dapper is a smart contract wallet that's actually right in the middle, and what it is the concept of smart contracts for games. Like for CryptoKitties, there's 3 contracts, and they determine the genetics and the auction and all of the rules for the game, right? And we took that concept and you're like, okay, what if we gave every single person a smart contract? And the good thing about a smart contract is that it's programmable and it's decentralized. So that's what we did with Dapper. It took about 3-4 months of, building a completely from the ground up unique architecture. We didn't fork anything. We didn't, we didn't kind of like rescale layer and built it all the way up in terms of the technical architecture. And then we spent 4 or 5 months doing user interviews with CryptoKitties players, which we're kind of in a good we're in a lucky position where we get to have user feedback directly, and we get to test this wallet with them, and then forming partnerships with other companies that are solving payment rails, because that's an area that we don't really have specialties in. So it's the perfect balance of those 3 things. And to answer your question, this is so important in solving this onboarding problem. That's why it's taken us so long in order to even get it out the door. And as of right now, Dapper, the wallet, it's on the Chrome store, but in the near future, it will be multi-platform. So you could imagine from a user perspective, it's just username, password, and you could access it on any of your devices. If one of your devices breaks down, or you pour water in your computer, new devices, and so the other thing about Dapper, which we're still working through, is that it subsidizes gas for the partners of Dapper. So right now, CryptoKitties players who are using Dapper, Ethereum Mod, Decentralized, My Crypto Heroes, and OpenSea, and a few other games that we're in discussion with, being a Dapper partner, we subsidize all of the gas for the users, and that's actually been really incredible in terms of firstly making a product that is really easy to use, concept of gas. We don't even call it gas in Dapper. We call it network fees. We've done a lot of testing with users around terminologies, and a lot of people are like, "What is gas?" And we're like, "Oh, okay, maybe we should not even introduce the concept of gas." People understand that network fees, and when your internet service provider, there's a network fee that probably comes in there, or your phone bill. So we kind of took those concepts that people are familiar with and introduced it into the wallet. So that's a long-winded way to answer your question about or how we're kind of thinking about onboarding and how we want to solve that problem. And we frankly like to cat food or dog food a lot of our own technology into the community and see if they really like it. And so far, the reception has been really positive.
Nice. That's fantastic. We've got a few more minutes here, but obviously before we let you go, we want to hear about Cheese Wizards, which is the next game from you guys. So tell us a little bit about that. When should we expect it? When can we play it? All that fun stuff.
I've got a Cheese Wizard. I'm waiting for the tournament. The tournament's starting here soon, right?
Yeah. So the tournament will start this summer. And for the people who are new, Cheese Wizards, the new game from us. We've been working on it. I don't know if it's a good thing, but we've been working on it since March 15th. So it's not been extremely lots of months. In terms of the ideation, it's been a few more months before then. But in terms of development, that's when we started. And so Cheese Wizards is the world's first, we call it kind of, Game of Thrones on crypto or blockchain, or the other word is Battle Royale with cheese if you're a Pulp Fiction fan.
The Game of Provolones. That's right.
Another word that's been thrown around, and so I mean the cheese puns are pretty endless here. So with Cheese Wizards, what you have is and these wizards, you could duel other people by casting spells. You have 5 spells you could cast in a duel, and it's either it's kind of like a rock paper scissors version. So you determine whether that's water, wind, or fire, and then the really cool thing about Cheese Wizards is that when you buy the NFT, which is one of the wizards, a portion of that price of the wizard goes into the big cheese, and I think that we hit more than 600 ETH in the big cheese. And so the way that it works is that there will only be one wizard standing at the end of all of this huge tournament, and that one wizard, that one person who owns that wizard, will have access to the entire big cheese, and it'll probably go up to we're going to have a second sale period, and I think that it could go up easily to 1,000 or more ETH. So say battle royale in Fortnite. It's not high graphic in the sense that you're going around and first person shooter shooting people, but all of it's on chain, and it's a really interesting concept. And some of the people actually, the power of Cheese Wizards, besides this new game concept, is this concept of decentralized tournaments, and we actually haven't really talked about it a lot. So this is going to be new news for you guys and for your audience in your community. We're looking to do a hackathon, online hackathon that will be 4 weeks long with CoinList. That will probably be in a similar period of during the tournament, and the premise of this is to kind of enable developers to build prediction markets, battle bots, DAOs for managing funds, or this concept of decentralized tournaments. So you could imagine that by participating in this official tournament that we organize, you could actually, organize your own tournaments in your own city, anywhere around the world, in a decentralized fashion, and you as a tournament organizer, whether you're a media company or a brand or another platform, could actually determine the percentage that you want to take part of in your own tournament. So that concept is fairly new. We haven't really spoken a lot about it, but that's kind of the underlying interesting points that we're probably going to be more public about it soon. And what we want is this have this large tournament of which people could win part of the big cheese, but then have an entire network of people who are going to be dueling Cheese Wizards all the time, any time around the world. And so that's Cheese Wizards in a nutshell. We're really excited by it. In the 1 week of pre-sale, we at least in the contract, we've hit over 1,000 ETH, and there's been by the Sacred Udder, and so we're really excited by what's going to be coming next, especially when the tournament comes into play.
Yeah, I think honestly, NFTs and all of this that we've talked about today, it's only gonna get better as the iterations go on, and the quality increases. And I cannot wait for these decentralized worlds and how we can have these main tournaments, but the offshoot tournaments. Because I think we were in the office talking about CryptoKitties, and we were talking about how we could purchase these CryptoKitties and breed them, but I can't wait until a decentralized world where I can go into like a kitty arena and battle and do things like that. So I'm totally excited for
that world is actually
What's that?
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say that concept is actually already here as well. It's something that we realized. It's called the Kittyverse. And so there's actually been nearly 50 or 60 developers who have been building kitty racing, kitty battles, kitty card games, even tools to analyze the market, genetic tools and Chrome extensions. There's already a network of third-party developers who aren't paid by us, but they love it so much that they built these amazing games on the side. And so that's actually been the core insight, because the first time around, we kind of realized it surprisingly, like, oh wow, okay, people could actually build on top of CryptoKitties. But with Cheese Wizards, the reason why we're having the hackathon is that now that we realize that this is the true nature of blockchain games, that we want to jumpstart it right in the beginning. And tools around the tournament, which would be a huge attraction. And so this concept of a cheeseverse, or the name is not finalized yet, is something that we're really passionate about. And this is the reason why blockchain games are so different from any other games that exist in the world.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, we're running out of time here. So if you can let the listeners at home know where to find information about Dapper Labs and about yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, so Cheese Wizards, it's spelled with a Z or a Z, and Wizard has an S, so follow us on Twitter. And CryptoKitties is also, and Dapper Labs is also on Twitter. We're mostly active on that. And we also have our own Discord for CryptoKitties. My own Twitter handle is Benny Zhang, it's BENNYGIANG. I oftentimes have a lot of interesting things that I'm exploring. The other thing that maybe we'll touch on next time is my obsession around sold the world's first draft during New York Blockchain Week for $9,500. It's the first digital fashion item on the Ethereum network, and so that's been really interesting. We did that on the side with launching Dapper and Cheese Wizards, and so we'll probably pick that up when another time. But that's kind of my obsession these days.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast here. We'll definitely have you back. And yeah, until then, thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Cheers.